everyone, and I am Swiss Guard, and this is episode number 210 of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. Tonight, we are doing the GX show, part 2 for the month of September, Gamer Experience Show. We're going to be talking about what we've been playing the last couple of weeks, and I am very pleased to be joined by 3 gentlemen who are so very wise in the ways of gaming.
That's some pretty kind words there. Wow.
You're building us up too much, I think.
Well, as a nice way to also say that we're all very seasoned gamers as well. But first up is Mr. DBQ Hams. How are you doing, DB?
What'd you say? I can't hear you. I'm seasoned. Anyhow, yes, I'm glad to be here. It's great to have all 4 of us here on a GX show. There's always some interesting discussion that happens when we get together. So glad to be here, gentlemen.
Mr. Towmaster 99.
Hello, everybody.
Ooh, silky.
Okay.
And finally, Mr. Game Logic. How are you doing, Game Logic?
I'm doing good. Hope you guys are doing well also.
All right. We're just going to jump right into it because, as always, we have a ton of games on the agenda. I don't know, since we're grown-ups that game, how we managed to play so many titles. Helps that we all kind of have our own, different interests. So we always have different things that we bring to the table, which is fun. But we'll start with the new releases segment. Doesn't always happen this way, but the past 2 weeks, we've been playing a lot of new titles. DB, you have this is like a banner. This is a banner segment. This like 1, 2, 3, like 4 titles, 3 titles.
3 titles, yeah. Maybe we group them together in. Let's take the mid-budget titles first, and play. Talk about Big Rumble Boxing Creed Championship and RICO London. So, Big Rumble Boxing Creed Championship is not ready to rumble, but it is in that same kind of genre of an arcade boxer. It is based on the Creed and Rocky franchises, which uses the music and some of the likenesses. But really feels like if this was 20 years ago, it would have been something you could have picked up at the grocery store aisle, when they had PlayStation 2 games sitting along with the magazines and the candy bars on the checkout stand. So it's not bad, right? It is not bad. It's a mid-tier game. It's $30, $40, somewhere in there. It is, the boxing there's actually a little bit to it, right? You can grab, you can slide out of the way, you've got a couple different moves in terms of moving around the ring or the parking lot or warehouse or wherever you're going to fight. But you've got combos, you've got heavy punches, quick jabs, you've got specials that you build up a meter to. It is it's okay. I mean, it wears its earnestness on its sleeve, and it is trying with the budget that it has. Like it has an arcade mode, which is simply just go do some boxing. It has a multiplayer mode where you can do couch co-op. There's no online battles. And the arcade mode, you pick a character and you run through a story on that character. There's about 8 characters, 10 characters unlocked to begin with, and about another 5 or 10 that you can unlock. And so you get people throughout the Rocky franchise. You get Apollo Creed and Adonis Creed. You get Rocky. You get both Ivan and Ivan Draco's son from the more recent Michael B. Jordan movies. And then you get a bunch of people that are either created for this game or are actually pulled from the VR game Creed, which is kind of a VR boxing game based around the first movie. There's training, there's boxing. I own it on PlayStation VR. It's actually pretty good and sometimes a pretty good workout. So, but it's a bunch of random characters in there, and it feels like that. It was kind of fun. I mean, I think it's something where if you have an affinity for either the franchise or the Ready to Rumble kind of arcade boxing aspect, I don't know that there's a whole lot of mileage to it if it's single player. If you're in a household where or you're in a dorm or apartment where you've got a bunch of people being able to, trash talk each other and challenge each other, I think there's some mileage here. But as a single player game, it's pretty shallow.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think it was 2 weeks ago when we were talking about the Aliens, whatever that
Aliens Fireteam Elite. Yes.
Right.
I am right in there with these mid-tier games here this month.
But the aspect of is it the IP that's really pulling you, or is it the game? So it sounds like this is another one where it's yeah, it's nice, but having the Eye of the Tiger blaring in the background probably gives it a boost.
Yes, I will say that I have a strong affinity for this franchise in terms of Rocky. I say that as someone who, during my wedding reception for the groom march, whatever, that we played Eye of the Tiger and I did push-ups. So yes, wow. I have a little bit of over exuberance for the Rocky franchise. But even that type of level of passion was stifled quickly within the first hour or so of playing this game.
Was this another GameFly rental?
Yep, this was a GameFly rental. Yep. So the next mid-tier game is RICO London. So RICO this is the second game in the RICO, I guess, franchise at this point. It's made by Ground Shatter, which is a UK studio. The original one saw you kind of going through room to room in warehouses. You'd bust open, breach a door, you get a little bit of slow-mo and take out the enemies. You were trying to collect evidence, and you had kind of limited ammo to do that. Here it is more of a spin-off than a sequel. It is much more confined. You're in just one building. You don't have some of the skill trees that you did in the original RICO. The original one came out in 2019 on all platforms. This one just launched last week, and it ends up playing out a lot like kind of an arcade first-person shooter, kind of a Time Crisis-y. And instead of the duck behind cover that you have in Time Crisis, you get the breach a door, slow motion, clear the room, get the ding, move on to the next room. When it's working, there's a lot of fluidity and tension to breaking through a room, clearing out the enemies. As the enemies get, bulletproof armor or helmets and riot gear, it starts to take more shots. You're always limited in ammo. And so there's this balance of sticking with the gun you have and trying to make the most of the ammo you have left and hope that you get some more ammo for it in the next room, or dropping it for a gun that you may not be as comfortable with, but you have more ammo. And it is in some ways it's run-based. There are probably 5 levels in it or so as you move through different warehouse sections. And when it's working, there's this really good flow. I played it both single player and co-op. And, in the co-op aspect, it almost felt kind of classic Rainbow Six-ish of, you're going to breach a room. You don't have any specs to the room, so you don't really know where the enemies are. Somebody's ducking, somebody's covering low, or you're covering left and right, and you get those few moments of slow-mo, trying to take out as many enemies as you can. And there's, you get through a tense battle because you have limited health, and the revives it's an interesting mechanic in the revives where you can have a stim that can revive you, but as you're applying the stim, you continue to take damage if you're shot. And so if your health goes down to 0, then even as you're going to take more damage, the revive is going to go slower than the damage you'll take if you die in the middle of a firefight. So there were many times where I died in the middle of a firefight and had a revive, but in the process of trying to apply it, that I would get gunned down, and you restart the level kind of all the way back. So it is. I found myself definitely. It got my heart rate up in some tense moments as I'm squeezing by through a couple rooms with single digit health, trying to make the most of the slow motion and hope for or conserve a health pack until I really need it. And then I got to the final boss room, and it is waves and waves of enemies and a real bullet sponge type of boss that hides out on a second side of a room. And I think I went through probably a good 24 to 30 enemies, and they kept spawning to some degree. And I don't know if there is a cap or if they continue to spawn, because eventually I ended up with a couple enemies that only their guns spawned in and floated around their space shooting at me, and the models were gone. So eventually, my son and I playing it, we did finish the boss, and he had a kind of cover from one room and had just enough angles to hit the side of the boss and get some damage and kind of chip away at him. So all of that is really positive in terms of the gameplay. I finished it. I got to the final room in 3.5 hours, but spent another 2 hours trying to finish the boss. But the game itself is $35 on PC, $40 on console. I think if this was a game that was $20, I would feel a lot more comfortable saying, yeah, it's a fun little arcade experience. But at $40, it's hard to say that there's a lot of value there. It's definitely something maybe to wait for on a sale. But it's also, interestingly, I went back and looked at the original RICO, and the credits list for that is significant. Lots of developers, lots of programmers, lots of QA testers. And you look at the credits for this game, and there are two designers, 4 programmers, and 3 artists. And that's it.
But it's the same studio? Same
studio. So either they didn't have the same level of investment funding, or, some of their people are working on something else. So it's a significant smaller development team working on it. And so it's interesting to have something in the same game, same studio, but to have such a difference in terms of both the scope and also the size of the development team.
I'm sorry, did you say you played the first one, or you didn't?
Yeah, I played the first one. I played it back in 2019 on PS4. And actually, when this game came out, the original one was like $8 on sale on Steam. So I picked it up just to be able to compare them. And the first one, you can tell that it's made by a bigger studio. There's a lot more depth. There's branching paths. There's kind of a weapons upgrade, where this is very much kind of a linear run-based aspect.
Just stripped down.
I almost wonder if there was something like this was supposed to be like a DLC, and then they tried to, I don't know.
It certainly could be, right? I mean, this is where it does not have a number next to it. It has a subtitle, and so it could feel like a spin-off type of thing.
What was the last game that you played?
So the last game I played some is Sonic Colors Ultimate on the Xbox Series S. It's Sonic Colors for the Wii. It's a good 3D platformer. It's an enjoyable Sonic game. If you enjoyed 3D Sonic games before, Sonic Colors was originally good, and it still is. Runs silky smooth, butterly fast. I don't think butterly fast is right term, right? Butterly smooth.
You can say,
yeah, sure, right?
Play yourself up, you'll go pretty fast, I say.
It looks beautiful. I mean, the colors in HDR looks really good. And then you get to the cutscenes, which have not been remastered and are still in their Wii era polygons. So, I think there's a lot more game for $40 in Sonic Colors Ultimate than there is in RICO London. But I think I ended up spending more time with RICO London than I did Sonic Colors.
All right. Well, anyone have any further thoughts on Sonic Colors? Kind of not a ringing endorsement.
I mean, I think at this point, if you like Sonic games, or Sonic as a character. And if you do, then this is a great game. It's not a game that is going to, at this point, you have a sense of what Sonic games are like. So,
well, that's kind of maybe the sad part of the tale is that, like, try as they might, it seems like that is a franchise that is just frozen in time and design. Like, any effort to move it left, right, or forward has seemed to not work out well, and the only thing left to do is just keep repeating the same thing over and over again, which I guess, Nintendo has found a way to get paid for that. So
I don't even know that they're repeating successfully, right? Sonic Forces and all the like Sonic Boom and the other ones that came out after this are not nearly as good as Sonic Colors from 2011. I mean, this and Sonic Generation are probably the last time that a 3D Sonic was good. But I agree with you, Game Logic, that they really haven't figured out how to crack that nut in terms of following up, evolving a Sonic 3D game.
Well, we'll go from one classic franchise to another that did kind of figure out how to evolve it. I picked up WarioWare Get It Together, which came out on the 10th of September. And initially, I just downloaded the demo. It was literally it was an E2KG, try to play something a little bit different play. And I liked it a lot, and surprised, like, my family liked it a lot. Vela really got into it. So I went ahead and used up the last of my Nintendo eShop gift cards and from leftover from last Christmas, and we bought it day one. So I have never played a WarioWare game, but from a little bit that I've read, this is a little bit. This one did take it in a different direction because you're not like just the player doing the weird Wario mini game, like micro games. You have different characters, like the characters in like the WarioWare kind of franchise that are part of the gameplay. So in the story, they get sucked into the video game itself. So each of the different characters like controls a little differently and attacks a little differently. So even though you're playing the same micro games, you might have to go at it in a different way given how the characters move. Some of them move very naturally, like you hit up on the Joy-Con and you go up, you hit left and right, you go left and right. Some of them are constantly moving. One of them that I thought was pretty clever was there's a pair of kindergartners and they are constantly jumping just the entire time. It's just they jump. And I thought that was kind of cute. And, one girl's on a moped and the moped's out of control. So she's always moving around the screen unless she throws her boomerang because she has a boomerang. In which case she freezes and the boomerang is constantly moving around the screen. So there's a lot of different dynamics to just moving around. You have to know the characters, and then you have like the crazy mini games. The crazy micro games. And I played through my wife beat the story mode in like one sitting, and I beat it, really quickly within an hour or two. But of course, that kind of opens up more stuff to do. And point isn't to just beat the story. The point's to play the games. So, do you unlock more games as you play? Like, yeah, as you beat the story mode, does that open up other characters to play as, things like that? As you go through, you encounter, like, you find some of your friends in like the video game world, and each one is like had, I guess, designed a level of Wario's game. So the first set of micro games are ones that Wario did, and then the next one is now it's like nature. So they're all nature themed from whatever person made it, and tech theme. One of them that I really appreciated was Nintendo themed. So one of the characters is like a Nintendo geek, and so all
8-bit? The little guy with the helmet.
8-bit.
Yep.
Yeah. And 9-volt is what they call them. So the games were like, even like you're in a Super Mario Land Game Boy, all the way up through like Breath of the Wild and Fire Emblem and Splatoon. So they did some really cool stuff integrating Nintendo franchises, and as a Nintendo nerd, I appreciated that. But I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, but when you're busy, like being able to just play some rapid games is actually a fun change of pace. And, you know, it kind of has a goofy sense of humor. It's Wario. So
I've got it sitting for GameFly. I haven't played it yet, but it came in yesterday. Do you play it handheld or on the TV docked?
Both. So what I wish we would have had time to do and I didn't get to is play the multiplayer. Because you can control 2 characters on the screen sometimes. And I think there are some that you can even do 4. But we hadn't gotten to that. But you know, a lot of people in my family have been all playing through it. And it's been good. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
No, thanks. And that gets me more excited to dive into it. So I thought there was mainly multiplayer, not a lot of single player, but I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed the single player concept.
Yep. Well, Tao, you played Craftopia? Hadn't heard about this one.
Me either. And I can't even remember where I even saw this, like how I even came up. I think I might have saw it on Twitter, as is the case lately, where it came out for Game Pass, of course. And it's actually a game preview game on the Xbox. It was actually originally came out on the PC in 2020. Was it, I think like September 2nd or something like that. So it's been out for a little bit on PC. It's on the Microsoft Store and Steam right now. But I got it on Xbox. Playing on the Series X, and I played it on my Xbox One X. And it's a very interesting game. It's a survival game, basically. And it's kind of a mishmash of like a bunch of different games, though. Like you got your open world sandbox area you can kind of explore. You can do crafting, obviously, because it's Craftopia. You can do farming if you want. You can, and when I'm saying this, like, I mean, you can kind of like dig deep and like get like very specific on what you want to do. There's dungeons you can, go and hack and slash. I did a couple of those as I kind of started to get used to the game. And this is one of the games where they don't really tell you anything, like kind of the basics, like just how to move and jump and, hey, you can use this to farm. But there's a lot of nuances that you have to like look up, which kind of puts me off a little bit sometimes. Like that would happen with me with Don't Starve. I had been playing that here and there with some other Discord friends, and I kind of got away from it just because that was like too much. Like I had to do way too much research. Like there's no tutorial in that game, so I was like, I kind of fell off of that one. This one a little bit better because you can, like I said, you can do what you want. It's a little more open, and it's not as hard. Like in that Don't Starve, I was like, even the simplest thing, like just to find food and stuff, could be kind of hard sometimes. So you really had to like, craft certain things to get certain, fruits or animals or meat, to get the meat and stuff like that. But here, I mean, if you just, you hit a cow or hit a pig, and they just have like regular animals and just like weird other animals, and you'll get the meat. So it's not, super, super hard. But like the farming, you can like, there's these contraptions you can, or there's conveyor belts you can do, and like you load the animal into that, and it takes it to this machine, and then this machine just takes off the milk from the cow, and then it goes to the next machine that takes out the meat. So it's like you can get really, really specific. I haven't done all that yet. I haven't gotten that far, but I'm having a lot of fun though. It's pretty cool.
So just want to
graphics.
Did you say hit a cow or hit a pig?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying that, just in case.
So. I mean,
it's like Minecraft. It's like Minecraft where they have the animals or the mobs as they call them. So
these would be accidents, not intentional goals or objectives of the
game. Actually, it was a quest that they put up on the screen for you to do. Like it just says, get milk or get meat, and you have to do, at least for the meat part, you have to kind of like kill the animal. Unfortunately,
I'm watching the video on Steam, the Steam store for this, and he talked about conveyor belts. I'm glad you mentioned it because they have a video there with hundreds of cows on a conveyor belt going into a giant vat. So it looks, and then it's mixed in with like a complete ripoff of Link's hang glider from Breath of the Wild, and like the slow motion, like bullet time of Link doing the arrows. Like it's like a mishmash is a good way to put it from what it looks like. But I mean, I'm glad you sound like you've enjoyed it. It looks different.
Yeah, it's like Breath of the Wild, Minecraft, Ark, a little bit of No Man's Sky thrown in there with the base building and like the house building and stuff like that. But yeah, like I said, I mean, you can just pick one area, kind of like in Minecraft, where you could just pick one thing and just kind of and dive into that, or even in like No Man's Sky.
And Craftopia was a better name than Animal Killer Simulator.
Yes. They were trying to soften the blow a little bit there. Oh, you're just doing crafting? Well, sort of, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, yeah, the glider is like a straight rip off of Breath of the Wild, which you get pretty early on. You get that. So the only thing with this, it's an in-game preview, is the animation and the graphics are a little, they're a little simplistic. At least even on the Xbox Series X, like you can bump up the. Which I was kind of surprised. You can bump up the resolution and stuff and the different graphic settings, which you don't see in a lot of games. I mean, like it literally gives you like the different resolutions, in there. Like if you're on like a PC monitor, so that was kind of cool. So I bumped it all the way up, and it was still like, okay, yeah, it looks better than my Series X, or I'm sorry, my One X. But it was still, still a little kind of janky. Like even just like the movements and the animation is a little like stiff. It's not it's not natural. So, but I mean, like I said, it's game preview, so I'm sure that we'll work on that as it going forward. And I actually just learned today that it's actually cross-platform for PC and Windows Store PC and Xbox. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of neat. And I haven't actually even done the multiplayer yet. I've just been doing just my own world. So. But yeah, I've been having a lot of fun. There's a lot more that I have to learn about this game, because you have to like craft different weapons and gear and tools to get different kind of like materials and stuff like that. So I'm sure there's like a whole bunch of stuff I haven't even seen yet. So it's going to be interesting to go through this game.
So you played a lot of Minecraft over the years. Is there enough here to keep you going? Is there enough different to keep you away from Minecraft and into this?
That's a good question. I think once it's released, possibly, like if they can polish everything up, it'd definitely be a contender. And another game I forgot to throw in there is Pokemon, because you can actually catch all these animals if you want. You don't have to kill them. Game logic.
I saw that too.
Yeah.
And instead of a Pokeball, they have a ghost from Destiny.
Oh yeah. It does look like a ghost. I didn't even think about that. It's kind of like a crystal like shaped thing. Like, yeah, you throw that at them and you can catch them. So, that's another thing. Kind of the UI is I mean, maybe if I was on PC, it'd probably be a lot better, which is probably a lot of survival games like this are working better. But you kind of have to like switch between there's like multiple layers of menus that you can switch between, and they do a pretty good job of doing it. I know like an Arc and I guess Minecraft only has really one toolbar that you work from, but like Arc is another one where you have multiple levels of tools that you can kind of switch between. So and they might have to work on that a little bit too. So it's a little rough right now, but yeah, there's this Pokemon. I'm sure there's all kinds of other games that are matched in here, but I haven't found them yet. So I'll have to keep playing and find out. And actually, I want to play multiplayer, because I think that would be really fun to just have a bunch of people in there and creating different farms and exploring with people and stuff like that. And the two dungeons I did, they weren't super hard. Like I think the first one I went in like way too early. Like I was like, oh, I can do this, and I just got thrashed. So once I leveled up, I just leveled up a little bit, got some better armor and gear, and I was good to go. It was still a challenge, but I was able to actually defeat the boss this time, and he was this big like robot like idol thing or something. So it's pretty cool though. I'm gonna stick with it and keep playing.
Cool. It's that was a fun one to just like I mean the thing that the stuff that they're advertising on Steam as like the highlights of the game is just such an eclectic mix of whatever. So thank you for sharing with the group. All right, pixplays time. So pixplays is when we give ourselves an assignment, like the neurotic gamers that we are, and we have 2 weeks to do it. Play based off a theme, or usually sometimes it's sprung from the recent gaming news or an announcement. And our assignment for this episode was based off of the gameplay trailer for Marvel's Midnight Suns. While we're pretty clear what the point of Gotham Knights is, Midnight Suns still eludes us. Regardless, we have now only 5 more days. I guess, not sure if that's 5 more days when this was written, but until we get even more info on the new title involving Marvel's Magic lineup. And so play anything related to this impending release due out March 2022. It can be superhero related, tactical RPG, deck building, card battling, anything in the XCOM franchise, anything from Firaxis, or anything you can justify as related, which is always a welcome loophole for the E2KG hosts. If it's not there, it's always implied. So, unfortunately, only Townmaster and DPQ did the assignment. And surprisingly, given the broad scope of the assignment, you guys stuck with the Marvel theme really closely. So, DB, we'll start with you since Tao just wrapped up. So, Marvel Future Revolution.
So Future Revolution is the kind of hyped mobile game that came out. They had done a trailer and some release info about it last year. It's an action RPG. It's made by Netmarble. It is 6 gigs worth of a download onto your mobile device. So, and in some ways it earns it. The graphics are really good. It reminds me a lot of Marvel Heroes. The what was that? The Gazillion or the Diablo-like Marvel game that was out on PC, then released on console, and within a few months then shut down. Basically, the concept is Marvel's expanded universe of dimensions has collided together, and which justifies why you have all kinds of different Spider-Man costumes and Captain Marvel's all running around a hub world and either pairing up or going out solo into kind of missions and doing, you're in a hub world, you grab a node that gets you into the next mission, the story beats. Like any mobile game, there's dailies and there's way more currencies. But as a game itself, it actually plays pretty well. It's an action RPG. You're running through a 3D environment. You've got a standard attack button. You've got 3 different skills or 2 skills and an ultimate that are on cooldowns. You start with a broad variety of characters to select from. You can be Starman, Storm, Iron Man, Black Widow, Captain America, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel. So you get and Star-Lord, if I didn't say that already. But so you've got kind of that cross-section of, do you like the X-Men? We got somebody for you. Do you like the Avengers? We got somebody for you. Guardians of the Galaxy? Covered. And then, you kind of make your way. You can unlock more as you go, either with paid currency or in-game pieces. It is really what it did was make me really sad that Marvel Heroes that doesn't exist, or made me want to go back and play Ultimate Alliance because it plays out and has some of those same feels. But while the gameplay is fun, it is still loaded with, it really depends on what your tolerance for the free-to-play multiple kind of currency palette is. If you can tolerate that, then there's a fun game here that you really don't have to spend any money on if you just want to play the story and enjoy the combat and the characters. But there's also plenty of ways to hook you in terms of pulling money out of you as well.
All right, Prime, you played Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 on the Switch.
Well, actually,
yes.
if I jump in and ask a question, sorry, I didn't.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So DBQ, you've played more than one Marvel game on mobile, right?
Yes.
So
to stop and think. Yes, the other ones are a little more. This is more action oriented, where some of the other ones like Strike Force or like where you are, it's the gacha game where you're leveling up your characters and going into kind of an automated battle aspect based on your stats, right? I think that's some of the other Marvel game aspects there, or it's a fighting game aspect.
Right. And so kind of that momentary pause is kind of the exact reason that I wanted to ask the question I wanted to ask. So I see the advertisements for these things all the time. I go to my Twitch channel when I'm not logged in, and there's like an advertisement for one of these things. I see them all over the place, and they're always are playing some ad based game on mobile, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, or why this thing is different than the 99 other things that I've seen. Like, I don't like. I mean, and then as you mentioned, they all have like the gotcha game mechanic, like kind of embedded in them. So, like, how? Like, I don't even know how to ask the question. Like, how do you like differentiate between these things, and like, is there one, and is there a model, a design pattern for any one of them that kind of stands out as like a thing that you'd really like want to play? Or is it, because I've written about this recently, and I've written about how, and there's lots of discussions in the gamer community now about kind of like the Insomniac Marvel games, as if those things are coupled together. And I'm like, no, that's not the way I would think about it. So, but I talk about like comic book fans who are gamers, and their proclivity to quite often, not you, but play games that really aren't that good just because they have like the Marvel character in them, right? Because for 30, 40 years of gaming, like those games don't come along that frequently.
Yeah, so I guess the distinction here is that Future Revolution feels like an actual game, where some of the other Marvel games either feel like they're using the Marvel property and throwing it into one of the other game kind of molds that are out there, right? Like, you pull cards, you go into battles based on the skill, you earn enough to pull more cards or to feed your other characters to level up. Or you're in a fighter piece, or it's kind of maybe a little bit of strategic tactics based, but still kind of very gotcha based. This feels more aligned with a traditional console game than it does the standard genres that you see in mobile development. That this could be, you take out the multiple currencies, and this would feel right at home playing on a PC, playing with a controller in hand, actually playing it with a Bluetooth connected controller makes it feel pretty fluid because the action is real time. The action is 1-to-1. The production values are really high, and I think that helps. So that's where it feels a little different. I played for quite a while without really feeling like I even wanted to look at the monetary aspects. Like, it was just fun to play. Like, I could invest in time in figuring out all the menus and the different, there's gear, and there's gear bonuses if you match a set, and you can pay money to get gems to buy more boxes that will give you some different tiers of gear, but that isn't necessary, at least in the first few hours of playing the story piece, that it's not necessary to invest in that. Like, if you enjoy the Skinner box of seeing the numbers go up on your gear, there's ways to do that. If you just want to run around in a 3D space with characters you like, you can. I mean, I think they're betting on the fact that those people will play it long enough to feel like, oh yeah, I guess I do want to spend some money in it. But I think that's where the difference is. That's not excusing the game, but I think in terms of what's out there in mobile for Marvel licensing, this feels more complete as a game experience.
Well, it's very interesting that you bring up that thing of like how so many of the games feel like it's just a Marvel thing taken and shoved into like another game design pattern or model, which is super interesting because it cuts in the opposite direction. That's one of the things that I actually compliment the Marvel movies about, is that so many of the Marvel movies are like a great heist movie or a great spy movie, and they would be great movies still, even if you took out all the Marvelism out of them. But in games, I feel like that doesn't necessarily work. This assignment was driven by Marvel's Midnight Suns, which, quite frankly, I like look at that and I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, I don't get it, right? Which is a lot of, and a lot of what I wrote about is how when the marketing speak behind one of these Marvel property games loses the lead in pre-release, it just extrapolates into like post-release sales, which to me is what happened with Avengers, which was just messaged as this game as a service, and I'm like, why would I ever want to play something like that? So the thing about the Marvel Midnight Suns, and I'll shut up and let in the Towmaster talk about his game. But the problem I have with Midnight Suns is like you go to the website and like the trailer starts off with like Captain America, Captain Marvel, and Iron Man, and I'm like, which feels like incredibly gratuitous MCU fan service of bringing in those heavy hitters, which have nothing whatsoever to do with the actual Marvel Midnight Suns storyline, right? And to me, kind of take the magic Marvel characters, which is supposed to be kind of what that's about, is kind of raising those characters out up to prominence enough to gain some visibility, but you cloak them behind, right, these very money mongering, right, capitalizations on recently released IP. So I was just curious to see how that unfolded. I'm sorry, Tal.
You're muted, Tal.
You're fine, is what I say. No, you're fine. It's kind of funny you say that because I mean you can kind of say that, I guess, about Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 Black Order, because not necessarily. I mean, yeah, it's kind of Diablo-like, but there's no, in this case, there's no loot as much as there was in the two previous games, but not so much for like what the game is, but kind of like where it came out. Like we had gotten the Marvel movies kind of finishing up or just about to finish up at this point, and this is kind of capitalizing on that with the Black Order, Thanos, and all this the Infinity Stones and everything like that. So, but I mean, I enjoyed the game. I was kind of hoping it would be more kind of like the older games where you did get gear and stuff, even though it's kind of goofy, I guess. Like if you think about it, because like okay, I'm going to put a belt on the Incredible Hulk, or special shoes that'll give me super speed or something like that. But I kind of enjoyed that gameplay though, and the previous two, and this was a lot more pared down. Well, there were some drops. There was more for buffing like your strength and your your abilities and stuff like that, your special powers. But it wasn't, it was kind of different from what it was. But I mean, I still enjoyed this game. So it was still fun. Sorry, go ahead.
As you mentioned the thing about the gear, right? One of the things that I always felt was comical and kind of like didn't work well in those previous games is, and again, I go back to this is already an established character. Why are we giving Spider-Man like powers that he never actually had? Right? This feels like when did Superman 2 come out like 1977, and like one of his powers is he can strip the S off of his chest and throw it like a piece of fly paper, and it expands like 10 times the size. I'm like, I don't think that's an actual Superman power. So one of the problems though, on top of that, was the fact that it would never render or change the appearance of your character. So it really even further didn't matter. So is that still the case here? Like any progression like doesn't actually like get rendered on screen?
Yeah, I mean, they don't even have any gear technically. I mean, really, in this game, it's more drops for just buffs of your different abilities, your strength and all that. So you don't even get that. But to kind of go on a tangent of that, the new Avengers games does do that, where you pick up the different chest plate or armor or wristbands and stuff like that, but it never actually shows on your character, which is. Okay, I get it. Like you don't want to do that because these are Marvel characters, but it's from playing past games like that, it's like kind of a bummer that you don't see, that change in your character. So kind of going that way, in that game, that's where as soon as I saw that, I was like, it kind of took me out of the game, and it's just kind of weird, I guess, just from playing other games like that, and it just kind of like a hologram that appears in the menu screen, but it doesn't actually appear, on your person once you're playing them. So I don't know, it's just kind of weird. But going back to the Marvel Ultimate Alliance, yeah, I mean, I was actually playing with a friend of mine, so that's probably another reason I was really enjoying the game, because that's pretty much the case when you're playing with somebody especially when you're playing with somebody So I played maybe halfway through this game, maybe a little bit less than half originally, just by myself, and then we started playing together, and we've gotten quite a ways through. I think he beat it not on his own, but with other friends and stuff previously. So I'm kind of going through the the story and everything. So it's an interesting story. I mean, it's it's still following, the Infinity Saga, that kind of, from the MCU and from the comic books, they're trying to collect all the stones, before Thanos and, the Black Order. But it's still, they kind of spin it a different way. And kind of like in Revolution, you get all the characters, you got Ghost Rider, you got Daredevil, you got, there's actually one, I don't even know who she was, to be honest with you, which was kind of weird because I was a big Marvel guy, or still am. But then you got, Fantastic Four and X-Men and all that. So, and, they have, pretty much anybody and everybody. I believe some of it's DLC. Like I think the Fantastic Four was DLC. And there's some other ones that came out. But I kind of just bought the whole bundle. So, I mean, I'll knock everybody eventually anyway. So, I mean, which I don't know how to feel about that, or you're kind of hiding behind the paywall kind of a thing. But no, I'm still enjoying it. I'm still going to be playing it since I have somebody that I can actually play with. It was actually pretty smooth because we're obviously playing online and not playing. I don't even know if I'm assuming you could play couch co-op, but I'm not sure. But yeah, it was smooth when we were playing. Didn't have too much of a problem actually getting into a game. The interface is a little weird, but I mean, we figured it out eventually, and we were able to get playing. And I think we actually did get a third person eventually, and still pretty smooth. For this is just a Switch game, and the online, but I guess it's just using their servers and not anything of Nintendo's. So. But yeah, I'm gonna continue playing this game, and I was gonna play DC Universe 2, but I actually didn't get a chance to do that either. But maybe next time. But
for some reason, I thought somebody had already. Has anybody played this until now?
Yes, I think Tao and I talked about it when it came out.
Okay. Yeah, DB had played it too, right? Did you beat it? Eventually beat it?
No, I bounced off it in part because it was not the Marvel Ultimate Alliance from the last two. And it was more. I mean, I have tried to come back to it over time, and as much as I love the characters and the properties, the finickiness of combat, it is, I just haven't found it resonating with me.
Yeah, it does get kind of hard though. I mean, especially if you're playing by yourself on some of those levels and some of those bosses. So it is definitely challenging.
Well, thanks, gentlemen, for sticking so close to the assignment. Now I'm kind of curious if Game Logic does end up trying to play Midnight Suns. But anyway, Game Logic, you haven't had a chance to chip in really yet, but you're playing some MLB the Show.
Yeah, and don't feel bad about me not being able to chip in at all. I've been plenty occupied by monitoring our first return to doing the live show on YouTube, so it has been a good bit of interesting here behind the boards. But yeah, I took the opportunity to jump into MLB the Show 21 over this past week, so I hit up a couple of games on Game Pass, actually, on my Xbox Series S, sitting back over there, which always makes you feel good about actually utilizing your subscription instead of simply just paying for it all the time without actually consuming any of the content. But obviously, we covered this game earlier this year. Huge, first game, out of Sony San Diego. A lot of choices of how it would be published and delivered to the other platform, taken out of the hands of Sony. This game is pretty good. I had problems with MLB The Show 20. I think DBQ and I talked about those extensively, and a lot of the times my impressions are, this is a game franchise that has a history of improving through the first, 3 patches or so, and really the game that you live with, right, is really not the game that gets delivered initially at release. It's usually the game that arrives like 3 or 4 months later. But quite frequently, the way that I whip through games in that rotation, often my impression that sticks with me is like, how is the game initially out of the box? MLB 20 had problems out of the box. It had problems with animations. It had problems with fielding. A lot of things were kind of tweaked or tightened down from a tolerance level to where the game was very unforgiving out of the box. This one's better. And having gone through the history of talking about this for several years now, the things that I'm particular about, right, are kind of repeat it again this year. I have left dynamic difficulty scaling on, whereas definitely last year and maybe the year before was when I first started maneuvering to only leaving dynamic scaling on for pitching. So in general, my skill level is such that I am really good at pitching. I am very mediocre at batting, and I'm absolutely horrible at fielding. And so I tend to I was maneuvering towards leaving dynamic scaling on for pitching, but then on batting and fielding, just locking it down to a level where I could actually play the game. Interestingly enough, I actually did, because part of my problem also has been when dynamic scaling is on, when I get aggravated by it's how there are some games with runaway scores. So I actually did some digging into the statistical history of Major League Baseball and looking at the highest frequency in terms of data spread of win margins. And it turns out that over the history of the MLB, the vast majority of games are decided by a winning margin of 1 run. The second highest distribution is among a winning margin of 5 runs or more. That's actually more than the winning margins of 2, 3, or 4 runs. And that's generally just because the games are typically so tight that they're only decided by 1 run. But then any time that the other team outstrips the other team by 5 or more runs, then that game's in the bag. There's just no way for the other team to recover. So now that's what I'm kind of using as my own tolerance for how dynamic scaling goes, and where I will get in and intervene is when I start getting those margins that are 5 runs or more. So I haven't played a lot of games. I'm continuing to do what I always done, even though I am always heavily incentivized and encouraged and a little jealous of the way DB plays, but still I plod through the season by playing the full-length game. So I've spent maybe 4 hours with the game, but I've only played like 2 games in spring training. So played the first game against the Caps and won that 1-0. I think I'm still in the middle of a game with the Marlins, and I'm up right now 5-2. So how it's great. I mean the in 20, the biggest problem I felt in 20 was that the pitching models were just, and I know there's always various pitching models, but the one that I am typically accustomed to using just didn't feel right. And as I tried to use the other 2 methods that I can think of, those models were just heavily like convoluted. And it was really, the other problem I had with MLB 20 was in the pitching model, especially, it was very difficult to know what you did that made you successful and then to repeat it. So it was always like a guessing game, which is kind of the same experience that I talked about having with NBA 2K. What was it, 20 DBQ or 21? The one that
20
came out
last year was.
Yeah, the one that came out on the 20. Series X and S Game Pass, but the one on Game Pass wasn't like the.
It's 21.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, it was just so much of a guessing game. And it made
so
it really
what pitching model are you using?
I'm just using the default one that comes out of the box. So it's the one where you're able to use the analog stick to decide where in the strike zone you're going to place the pitch, and then you press and hold the A button, and then usually when your pitcher is at high energy, you will get another buzz during the windup when it tells you that it's a good point to release. But as your pitcher gets tired, you don't get that buzz anymore, and so you start having to use your own judgment, which actually is kind of a fun part of the game because you don't get that feedback response, and it's your skill and you're deciding on where the release is going to be. This is also the first year because I haven't done this in the past, except times when I've gotten like particularly frustrated with how a game was going. I'm also using some of the aftertouch, so where you can apply some wiggle on the left analog stick. Slightly after release to adjust, where the pitch goes. And I'm using that for when the pitcher targets a certain corner of the strike zone, but then he throws it and then it lands like out of the strike zone. I'm like, this guy's pitching wide right, so I need to, put some aftertouch on it to scooch it back to the left. So, it's pretty good. I'm trying to think if there's anything. The fielding model is better this year. I complained in 20 about how, like, particularly if you preloaded, like, it was just so unforgiving about, like, a microsecond too long and you were throwing the ball, like, up in the stands somewhere. So that feels better and a little more tolerant. But in the game's also a little better this year about. I sometimes get wonky in fielding when there's certain options you're trying to take, like first first base first baseman pulls off the base to go get a pitch, and I'm like, I don't want to. I'm not going to chance throwing it to the pitcher, right? Because he moves over and covers first base or the second baseman. I'm like, I'm just going to run it back or tag the guy out on the line. And it's much more responsive this year about doing that. A lot of times last year, I'm like, I was trying to do something like that, and just like the play would go completely wild, and I would just be again thoroughly frustrated with fielding. So, but it's pretty neat, and the graphical enhancements on the Series S they handle fine and well. I don't experience some of the performance drops that I see in Call of Duty I only see those in Call of Duty in the preload screen. Like once you're in the match, there's zero problems on the Series S at all. But the game looks really sharp this year on the Series S, and no problems with frame rate or loading textures or anything of the nature.
Really cool. It's been a while since we had like a spreadsheet or statistical analysis reference on the show, so that's impressive. No, but that sounds really cool. Yeah, it's interesting hearing now that I played Pro Yaku Spirits a little bit. I appreciate the talk about the differences in the mechanics. Not having been really a baseball gamer till recently. I don't want to spend too much time on the next game because it's been talked about quite a bit on this show. But it's new to me. So I picked up Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War because it was on sale, and every now and then I get an itch to play a genre that I don't typically play, and I've been kind of wanting to play a good FPS for a while. So I finally invested. DB Game Logic and I played some zombies, and then when we weren't doing that, I was focusing on the campaign. So zombies, I remember, let me put it this, the last time I played Call of Duty was Modern Warfare 2 on the PS3. So it's been a long time. And I might have played zombies. What was the Call of Duty, like the Pacific one? There was a Pacific campaign or something way back in the day.
Yes, that was the first Treyarch one. Okay. I have to think of the name, but yes, there was. It was in
World at War?
World at War.
Yeah.
Pacific Assault, I think, was the Pacific one.
World at War was the Treyarch one, though. I think that was the first zombies.
So that was like Call of Duty 3. So, well, it depends on which one Swiss is talking about. So that was the one that was like kind of like Call of Duty 3. So there was COD 1, COD 2, and then World at War. And then it went to Modern Warfare, which was technically kind of like Call of Duty 4. But there was a Pacific Assault one, I think is what it was called, which I don't even know if there was a console version of that one, but that was one where you the game started with you in Pearl Harbor, and then you went on assaults to Okinawa.
Medal of Honor. It was a Medal of Honor Pacific Assault.
Correct. Yep. You're right. You're absolutely right.
I just Googled it. So I could remember what you were talking about, but I couldn't remember the franchise. So
point is, it's been a while. So I played those on console, the latter ones on console. The last time I played a Call of Duty game on the PC was legitimately the original Call of Duty. Call of Duty, when you still bought PC games and they came in boxes and you had to put the CD in the tray to install the anyway. So downloaded that. Zombies was not what I was expecting because it felt much more like a campaign type style. Oh wow, there it is. I was expecting Game Logic to pull his his old school 20-year Call of Duty off.
No, there are no boxes or jewel cases in this room at all, or in this house actually. I'm completely digital. I can pull out a hard drive if you want me to.
But it wasn't what I expected. I had a lot of fun playing it though. obviously it feels really good to play through and everything, and like as Time Master said, when you're playing with your friends, it always enhances the experience. So that was good. Unfortunately, the game servers did not want to cooperate, and we had a little bit of lag issues. And there's some like bug where apparently if you don't install, they give you like 5 options to install like the different components. And even though one of them had nothing to do with zombies, if you don't install it, like I couldn't join you guys in zombies, even you're on the Xboxes, and we had to join in multiplayer and then transfer the party over to zombies. That was a little frustrating.
Yeah,
as far as go ahead.
Even for somebody who like me, who's been on the thing I don't play zombies. I loaded it like over the several days that we talked about it and we're trying to get together, and like that stinking thing did not show as fully loaded on my Xbox until I installed that arcade thing.
Yeah,
like,
it was the arcade.
Yeah.
But as far as the campaign was, like I think DBU told me it's a fun action movie. I'm enjoying it. I like the setting. I like the characters. I like the dialogue. It's like you said, it feels like a summer popcorn flick type movie. And if you're into that experience, it's great. The one comment I wanted to make, and then we'll move on, is early on there's a mission where you're in Vietnam, which I thought was kind of interesting to go back to that. I'm trying to think how many franchises have really explored that from like a first person. It seems kind of relatively untapped.
Should we get to?
I thought there was one, but so between Battlefield, Medal of Honor, and Call of Duty, I thought that there was like one attempt to go at Vietnam, and it came up as a very subpar.
It was either a Battlefield or a Bad Company expansion, but there was an expansion that went there. Yep.
Yeah, but you're right. It is still to this day, right? Like 50-something years later, still felt as if it's like a non grata like topic for video games to address.
Yeah, both Vietnam and Korea, I was thinking seemed to have. But there was a particular part of that mission was you're actually in like a Huey or something, a chopper, right? And you shoot around. And when I was playing it, the analogy that I felt, like what it reminded me of, kind of felt out. I was like expecting a first person, and I'm already like in this chopper doing this. I felt like I was playing Pilot Wings on the SNES, and you have that random like combat chopper mission to end the game. So like you do all these like really like meticulous things, like in Pilot Wings you did all these meticulous things, and you're like parachuting, and then it's like, oh, and now we'll put you in attack chopper and you go and raid or whatever. But that the mechanics reminded me of Pilot Wings on the Super Nintendo. So I don't know why, but that tells you the experience I have with franchises like this, which is minimal. All right, Tao, if you played a pair of games, multiplayer games. The first one, I don't really recall you playing that often. The second one is a Time Master 99 staple, I think.
Yeah, Apex Legends. I picked it back up the last couple weeks, or last few weeks actually. Played a little bit on the Switch. I was doing that when I was kind of away from my house. And that's all I had on me. So, and it plays fine. I mean, it's not obviously the best version, but I mean, it's playable. And then, I really kind of got back into it on the Xbox when I got back home. And I actually was doing fairly decently, which was kind of surprising. And I was just playing with randoms at this point. I hadn't even been playing with any of my friends or anybody I know. So, and I just got, didn't win any matches or anything like that, but I was getting some eliminations and stuff like that, and just more than usual, more than I had been. And I think that happens like from time to time. You kind of take a break on a game. You come back to it, even in a shooter like this. And even though gameplay is, pretty much the same, they have some new heroes or legends, excuse me, as they're called, in Apex, and they have different abilities. And actually, was what I forgot how I even came upon it, but I was watching somebody play it at some point, and they're playing one legend that I didn't realize he had this ability where he, like, when you're down and like totally dead, you can still recover, your partner's like card or whatever you want to call it in that game. But this guy has a drone that he can actually, you can go hide somewhere, pull out your drone, let it fly around, and he actually pick it up, remotely, so you don't even have to be by the person. I was like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. So I actually bought that one with in-game currency because I still had some. So I've been kind of practicing on him and kind of trying to see how he is, and he has some like kind of like sonar and you can detect enemies and stuff like that are some of his other abilities. So I've been playing that. So yeah, I've been enjoying that. And then the other one, which if you playing Call of Duty might have shocked people. I actually got into Overwatch lately, which I had like.
Yeah, how did you get into Overwatch? I remember discussions in 2016 when it launched.
Yeah, my friend kept bugging me. He kept saying, he's like, oh, you should play, Overwatch. And, I was like, I played it before. I couldn't get into it. I didn't know what I was doing, which, I mean, it's a lot of games, obviously, if you just got practice. But like Overwatch was just like, I just couldn't wrap my head around it. Kind of like Fortnite when I first started it, where I couldn't get a handle on the building mechanic in the game.
And on Overwatch, you've specifically been on record as saying you don't like hero shooters.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had played what was the other one? Was it the Gearbox one, I think?
Yeah, we played Battleborns a little bit. Battleborn.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, that game too just totally threw me off. I think I played more of that than Overwatch. I think Overwatch I just did like a weekend. It was like a free weekend or something when it came out, or maybe just like a demo when it first came out, at least on the consoles or on Xbox. And yeah, I couldn't get into it, but he kept bugging me. I was like, dude, come on, I'm not going to play it. And then, he was throwing sales at me. He's like, oh, it's only $15, and I finally got on, I think it was $15 on the Switch at one point, and I missed that one. And then it came onto the Xbox for like $20. I was like, all right, I'll get it. And my nephew's been playing it too. So I was like, all right, well, there's at least two of us that, we can all jump on and play. And, we start playing, and he was kind of explaining it to me. Just like he's like, he knows, like, I mean, we've been friends forever, since like I was like, I don't know, like 10, probably like 13 or 14. So, we've been knowing each other a long time. He knows my game style and, like how I like to play. So he's like, all right, here, play the tank, and he kind of explained a couple of the different ones. Cause I think there's like 5, maybe 6 tanks that you could choose from right now. And he, I played through a few of them and I was like, I don't know. I can't just get used to it. And then I got to one, Reinhardt. I was like, oh, this guy he's like pretty good. So and he actually told me, he's like, if you're going to start off with him. So that's what I did. I started playing him more, and yeah, I've gotten pretty good with him. So like I said, I play with him and then my nephew, and then there's another guy that he knows that'll jump on, or a couple of people actually that'll jump on every once in a while. So we can almost get a full squad, people we can actually talk to. And, once again, you're talking with people and, strategizing and all that. So, it's been working out, and I've really been enjoying it. I actually even play with some randoms every once in a while. That's kind of hit or miss, on like really bad hit or miss on this game. Like if you get a bad team, you get a really bad team. So it's like, sometimes I'll play a couple of games like, all right, I'm done with this until I can play with him or somebody else. So yeah, but I've really been enjoying it. And I've pretty much only been playing tanks right now. I think I've tried the healers a couple times, and I didn't realize how it worked at first. Like if you can pick like each, like before the match, you pick, if you just want to be a tank or just want to be healer, but just want to be the DPS, the kind of shooter guy or person, or you can do flex, which basically it'll pick any one of those. Like if somebody doesn't want to do it, they kind of just throw it to you. And usually when I pick that, like nobody wants to be the healer, so it always kind of just throws you the healer. So I kind of did that a couple times, and I was like, all right, I don't mind healing either, but I was like, I don't want to feel like doing healer right now. So I've been mostly tank and the DPS. So I've been kind of jumping around and playing different characters right now, besides when I don't main that one.
And I think that's new since the game first came out. So it is
it's been about a year or two
at
this point. I mean, it came a while ago, but it wasn't with launch. Yes.
Not at the launch. Yeah. There's been a historical problem in that game of people, like when it was wide open, that it was matchmaking was difficult because, like you said, everybody wants to play DPS. Nobody wants to play healer. So they have gone in and put that implementation in. So you can be match made to build teams that, like, there's always a healer, or there's always. I think it's still problematic just because of the population and who picks like those classes. But now I think they added that tweak so that you can build teams that are a lot more well rounded and not just like everybody playing DPS. I even think that game has like a sect of people who like nobody likes to play tank, and so you just get abused. If you wind up playing a tank because you draw everyone's fire, and like all the DPSers are running around concerned about their stats and not like using you tactically and strategically as a tank should be used. So
right, yeah, Yeah, and I think you're right. And then thinking back, that's what happens with those games. It's like I'm pretty much the only tank, and obviously the other team sees that, and they're just taking me out right away, basically. And my other guys are not trying to help or anything. My healer is like off somewhere else. So I'm like, okay, like what are you doing? So yeah, I didn't realize that was just a fairly recent option that they put in there, which is kind of nice though. So yeah, I'm going through there, and my friend and my nephew, like they've probably like unlocked everything that you can unlock in that game, and I'm like, oh, that's another thing too. You get a loot crate like every few matches or so, or like every few wins, which is kind of cool. You get just like skins and stuff, but it's kind of cool just to see the different costumes and stuff they throw out there. So it's kind of nice. But yeah, I'm an Overwatch guy now. So
well, let me know that. That game's not crossplay, and I don't have it on Xbox. So, but
it is crossplay.
Oh, it is. It is a cross-platform.
Yeah, just recently they actually did crossplay.
Oh, okay.
I think last month or a couple months ago or something.
Yeah, well, let me know because I have that I have it for PlayStation and I have it for PC.
Oh, nice.
Okay, I'll play as well. You got me back into a hero shooter. That doesn't take much, but yes.
Yeah,
because
I have always enjoyed it when I've played it, but that is a game that I cannot play with randos. Like, there's absolutely no point in me playing that game unless I'm on the radio with somebody else. So that'll be the one thing I like about that game more than anything is that I feel like they've done that community's toxic too, but I feel like they've done something to at least help with that notion of the accolades that you can give to any team member at the end of a match. I think that helps at least.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, actually. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in any kind of shooter or anything like that. So it's kind of cool.
You can do it. I almost want to say it's. I don't know if it's in Call of Duty. There's some other popular game that it's in, but it is like buried in the UI, and so nobody ever does it because it's so ridiculously hard to get to. It's just not intuitive.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, here it's just like boom, it's like right in your face, like as soon as you're in the game or in the match. So it's kind of cool. Yeah. I don't know if does that give you like extra XP or whatever, however you unlock stuff? Do you know, or it's just like a thing?
No, it's kind of been there for most of the game's life. It's just it's designed as a community building piece and originally kind of an accessibility, so that it didn't feel like you had to make the play of the game. That there was other things to reward you for, other ways for people to acknowledge team members.
Yeah, I'm not an Overwatch expert, but I believe it shows up like in your daily stats, right? So you can. I mean, it's something that I would feel good about. Like if I wasn't like if it was in something like a Call of Duty, and again, I feel like there's something in Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War that's similar, but like I said, it's hard to get to. Like if I was in my old Call of Duty state where I was always a subpar player, then at least maybe that would have given me a reason in those past years to have played, rather than the fact that I was always bottom two.
Yeah. Now you're pro.
Right. Game Logic, you rounded it out with racing title.
Yeah, so again, pulled this out of the Xbox Game Pass heap. So this was a game that came out in fall of last year. It's kind of a retro racer, but my problem with retro racers has always been, back when they weren't actually retro, but they were actually the state of the art of racing games. But then in all these rearward-looking retro racers that have come out since then, is that they're just always a pixelated, muddled mess, right? And I can't tell really what's going on at screen, particularly when you get up at speed. Like, it's just this, like, moire of like, colors that are just, like, you may as well have taken paint-filled water balloons and thrown them at a screen. So, this game, in terms of its color palette and the way that the faux pixels are rendered, is actually surprisingly clear, and so I can actually see like what's going on with the race. The other thing, it's very kind of Ridge Racer like in its gameplay and its physics model. It was apropos this week as I just recently wrapped up watching the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, so I was in the mood for some drifting, which I am typically not in the mood for in racing games. But but there's a lot more. I feel like there's a lot more kind of character wrapped into the characters. So you get like 8 or 9 different racers that you can have, which typically in a racing game isn't really something that you really choose as far as those racers having any kind of thing that differentiates them, right? Even in Formula One, like you pick character models and stuff, but it's only been in the last recent years as they've implemented like RPG kind of elements in them that like your racer has actually mattered. Usually they're just a model to sit in the car, right, for you to look at artistically. But these each have like their own personality types, kind of in the way that I think of like the cast of characters in SSX was, that they were all kind of individualized and different body types and all had different lines. And I think most of the character and charm that comes out of those racers in this game is by the lines of dialogue that they have. For this being an indie title made by a small foreign studio,
this is Sumo Digital. I mean, so it's an indie title because they kind of self-published it, but it is Sumo Digital they were involved with Sonic Racing Transformed. They did the racing stages for Disney Infinity. They got chops. Yeah, they're good.
I mean, well, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or if somebody can look in the Discord. So I think there's a publisher though. I want to say the developer is Lucky something or other.
Well, that could be. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Maybe you're right.
So I think it is a smaller studio that actually did the game itself. Again, I don't know the exact. It's not infrequent that the publisher jumps in and actually has a hand in finalizing the code or helping out as a support team or whatever. But there's a lot more charm and distinctiveness to the characters in terms of their voice acting lines that were put in. Much more so than I would have expected for a game of this size. Again, for me in my most recent history, being a person who's really falling in love with anything that gives me like 120 different combinations of in the progression model to like mix and match and put together like Lego blocks to do my thing, like Destiny 2 and Call of Duty. This is very similar. There's a very simplified UI that allows you to get to all of the different like racing outfits and helmets and cars and the color palettes you can put on the cars. So I find that enjoyable. At least at the default difficulty setting, it also maps well to my skill level to where I'm in a race and I actually feel challenged by like the front two cars, right, to pull off first. And I would almost say that almost every single one of my races for the round that I played, several nights ago, were all like every other race was a race down to the finish, and I won by a nose. So that kept the anticipation up, kept the anxiety up, kept the challenge up, kept me interested and focused in the game, and not just kind of tooling around or in old Gran Turismo style, winning the race off in the first 200 yards off the line. So fairly interesting for an indie title, really interesting as an Xbox Game Pass title. Just tons of content, courses and like I said, costumes and cars, which is kind of the exact mixture that I look for in a racing game.
So it looks like it is developed by both. That Lucky Mountain does a lot of art design, and so maybe Sumo Digital helped with some of the programming, but it looks like it's a coordinated effort. And then it was published by Curve Games, or Curve Studio. So I love this game. I played it when it came out. It had some DLC that also went to Game Pass. It just came off Game Pass this week. It's no longer on Game Pass, but it's been on sale for under $10 on every platform at this point. I actually just picked it up last week on Switch for like $5 because it's a fun little arcade racer where you could sit down, play a few games, and get some satisfaction out of it.
Yeah, it's exactly the type of game that I would love to pick up for Switch as well to take on the go. So yeah, I'll take a look at that.
All right. That pretty much will do it for our main agenda. Does anybody have any final thoughts or some other games they want to throw like a quick blurb in before we wrap up with next week's assignment? All right. So last week's assignment got really broad. This one is kind of specific. A lot of dev shops and publishers have stumbled, misstepped, or just completely lost their mojo over the last couple of years. Some of them have taken a positive step or two in the right to right the ship. Play a game from any dev or publisher that has truly stepped in the proverbial cow patty in 2020 or 2021, beyond just a game delay or two due to the pandemic. and has shown a publicly conveyed step or effort to return to green. Nobody's ventured anything in the agenda yet. So I'm kind of curious if anyone has any ideas.
So the
where they're going to go with this.
So the assignment is specific, but I will say there is a wide cast of characters for people to choose their assignment from. Whether you go after Activision Blizzard, Bethesda, BioWare, like.
I mean, you can simply mine a few of we can just go back to some of the old agendas for our superlative show. We definitely have contenders the last couple of years, but yeah, this is, I guess if we're going with the dev, that opens it up for a lot of games. You are right, Game Logic. But it's an interesting assignment, so stay tuned for 2 weeks episode. I guess that'll be 212. I will reveal those. All right then. So I think that'll do it for us. Next week is our deep dive when we cover the last fortnight in gaming news, and we kind of talk a little bit about the meta of games, and it will be Game Logic hosting with DBQ as co-host. So that'll be episode 211. Until then, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please, you playing the games you love, play with your friends. I think that was tonight's theme, is friendship. So heard a lot about peer pressure and friendship. All right. That'll do it for us. Everyone, have a good night. Bye.
Enemies close, have me thinking they're friends. 10 toes down, I'll be free until the end. Crib outside the city, I don't feel safe in my hands. Took so many years, I'm just waiting for the wins. I'm in debt to no one but the one who took my sins. I do it for real, there's no reason to pretend. If I do it once, I do it again. Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up, I'm just doing me, everything is on me, oh you matter what. Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up, I'm just doing me, everything is on me, oh you matter what. Add it up, told her if it's all me, everything is on me, gon' back it up. Matter what, told ya I'ma do me, why you hating on me, it's not adding up. I do roll like a Mack truck, country heart, I might cop a farm and go act up. Lot of scars, I was cold.